Hello everybody, and welcome to this tutorial video. In this video, I'm going to talk about the layer basics, like layers 101 sort of situation, and that's what I'm going to name it. All right, so I know I have this floor plan, and again, I'm using this floor plan for all sorts of tutorial videos. It's just for the sake of ease of time and efficiency, so I can get these tutorial videos out as quickly as I can. So I know you may not have anything created in your file, and that's okay, no worries. What I'm going to cover in this video will cover enough that you can create some new layers, okay? So the first thing that I want you to do is find your layer properties button. It's usually by default in the ribbon at the top, really about in the middle, okay? There you'll notice that this is in the entire layers category, and we want to use the layer properties button. There is also the command layer. Okay, that is also a thing, so you can always type the command layer as well, and that will open your layer properties. So if you do like to type in your commands, like I do, I'm a big fan of typing out my commands, I will type out layers sometimes. In fact, actually, I have a whole toolbar set up, and it's a lot quicker. But anyway, that's besides the point. You can use it either one of two ways. So layer properties here at the top, or go ahead and type that command layer, okay? So again, you may not have layers set up here. That's no problem. No worries at all. I'm going to set up a couple of layers, and you're going to use the exact same skill set that I use to set up my new layers to set up your preliminary layers or your first layers or your next layers. And you may actually have some layers created and something drawn. Okay. So I'm going to first talk, before I create some layers, I'm going to first talk about some basics of layers in general, of what you see here. And that way you can make your judgment call on what you're building your layers on, okay? Everyone's layers are going to be different. It all depends on what you are drawing, okay? Now, I have a basic template, and in fact, there is already a video set up on our support site about how to create your own master template. So if you want a whole round video on creating a master template in AutoCAD, which goes over pretty much basics from top to bottom on what you need in a template, please go back and check out that video. It's an hour long, lots in that video. All right, here I just want to talk about the layers 101, just to break it up, so then that way, if you just want to know about layers, you can just click on this video. So I want to go through the basics here as well. All right, so creating a new layer is this first button. Okay, the layer button is always like pieces of paper. It always looks like sheets of paper, and they're meant for like layers, to imply layers. Okay, and the star or the sun is a new layer. Okay, the snowflake is known as freezing a layer, and I'll get into that briefly in this video, but I'm actually going to make a whole separate video on freezing and thawing layers specifically, because that is so specific to some drawings. So I'm going to make that separately, just as an FYI. Okay. Then the next is deleting a layer, right? This is pretty self-explanatory with the red X. It's deleting a layer. And the check mark means setting it to your current layer, okay? And I excuse myself for my squeaky floor as I'm walking around and making this video. All right. The check mark is for a new current layer. It's you're setting the layer to your current layer, which means everything we draw is set to that layer. Okay, so let's say, for instance, walls. You see how I've got a check mark beside walls right here? That implies that is my current layer right now. Okay, so with that being my current layer, that means everything I decide to draw right now is going to go onto my walls layer. Okay, so if I all of a sudden made windows my current layer, right? I can either double click on it, which makes the check mark there, or I can click on the layer and use that button, and it makes it my current layer. Okay? So that's what these 4 buttons do. This is a filtering system of your layers. So some industries really go in depth with their layers, and they'll have like over 30 or over 60 layers, and sometimes they literally have to use a filter through their layers, okay? But for the sake of layers 101 and for the sake of the industries that we typically teach, like interior decorating, design foundations, architectural technology, interior design, industrial design, I'm just kind of speaking what's in Faculty of Applied Science and Technology. We don't really need that filtering function with the layers. I mean, I've gotten up to about 35, 40 layers. Some architects have, but honestly, with that filtering, I don't think it's necessary. I think, honestly, you have too many layers. And I'll explain what I mean by too many layers in a minute. All right, so in terms of this column system, it's just a chart. So we have a bunch of headings at the top, and you have your list, and it's a chart system, right? So these are all of my layers, and then these are the following categories for the layers. So of course, the first is status. So the blue layer means it's active, means there's things drawn on it, means it's things have happened on that layer. The check mark we've already gone through, that means it's set to my current layer. If you see this piece of paper with it being gray or white, that means it's a layer that's created but with nothing on it. A completely empty layer. Okay, and that's what that means. Next is the name of the layer, and you can name your layers efficiently as you need. So when we create a new layer, let's do so. I'm going to create on the new layer button. It asks you right away, what do you want to name it, right? Okay, so I need a layer for, what do I need? Let's see here. I know one I don't need, but I want to make that later as a step. Let's see. Oh, I have a front porch in my file, and I don't have a front porch layer. So let's say I want to create that. I'm going to name a layer porch. Now I'm going to backspace and actually do this in caps. Now, naming layers, this is sometimes based on industry. This is sometimes based on a project. This is sometimes based on your client. This is preference, okay? For the sake of these tutorial videos, I'll name my layers very basic. For the sake of class, a lot of the times you'll be asked to do ID, and that's for interior decorating or for interior design, right? Or for in terms of my field, in terms of more comfortably, that's what I was going to say is A dash. Okay, sorry, I meant to put caps. There we go, A dash. And so it just doesn't really, it sometimes depends on the industry, but sometimes it doesn't. Honestly, if I was doing one day, I'll work for myself. And if I'm doing my own files, it'll probably be architecture work and interior work because that's me on both. I don't think I'd actually put anything. I think I would just name my layers what they are. And that's usually how I teach. So just wanted to explain myself there because, again, if you have to name your layers in a certain way, please do so. In anything you watch or see in my tutorial videos, and you have to do it a certain way for class because your teacher's telling you to do it that way, please do so. Okay, please follow your teacher's instructions. They are the ones that are teaching you in the courses this semester and marking you and completing your assignments and passing you through these courses. Okay, so my tutorial videos are just to be used as a guide. It's just extra guidance, extra tips, just extra help. Okay. So again, if you have to name your layers in a certain way based on your assignment, please do so, okay? All right, next, on or off. This is literally meaning to that. The layer is on or off. So what I'm going to do to explain the rest of these is I'm going to, which is why I have something drawn, I'm going to just pan my drawing over here so you can see it on the right-hand side because I'm going to interact with my main layer, which is walls, okay? So I'm going to turn things on and off. I'm going to freeze them, and we're going to see what it does to the layer right away, okay? But I have to make something else my current layer because it does not like changes to be done to a layer while it is set as your current layer. Okay, I'm going to say that again in a different way, a little bit easier to understand. When a layer is set to your current layer, AutoCAD doesn't want you to make changes to it. Okay, honestly, it just doesn't like it. It'll sometimes give you an error, like this will. Okay, it's like, whoa, this is your current layer. It's gonna be turned off. Are you sure you want to do that? Because you're drawing on an off layer, right? That doesn't really make sense. So it'll give you a little bit of a warning. So just as an FYI, it did it anyway, even with the X. Interesting. And we just noticed what happened. Anyway, so just as an FYI, I'm going to change my current layer to text, and then I'm going to interact with the layer walls. So just in case you want to see this happen in your file, please change your current layer and then use a layer that is not your current layer to interact with. All right. So I'm going to do it again. Here we already saw what happens when I turn it on and off, but we're going to do it again for the sake of steps and argument's sake. All right. So on and off means literally turning the layer off, like it's off, like a light, right? the layer is off. It's gone. It disappears. You cannot see it in model space. You cannot see it in paper space. Okay, it's off. I'm going to turn it back on. And it's a nice simple light bulb. So, you know, it literally is on versus off, right? It's nice. The little icons are quite interactive and smart and user-friendly. I like them. Freezing. Okay, so freezing, I'm going to explain this specific column. All right. But when we get to freezing layers versus printing different viewports, again, I will cover that in a different video. Okay. This freezing is meant to be used temporarily while you're drawing things. So it literally means the layer is frozen. So I'm going to turn it frozen. So it actually turns them off, but they're still temporarily there. So is on and off. Okay, it's hard to explain the difference of on and off versus freeze and unfrozen. The main difference is copying. Okay, so I'm going to explain this and I'm going to close layers. You don't have to do this. I just want you to watch really. So when I have a layer on and off, I'm going to close layers. If I select all, like draw a box around all my drawings, the walls are not there. They are turned off. Okay, so even if I copy them, and I copy this entire drawing over. Oh, ortho was not turned on. Let's do that again. Turn ortho on, always straight, especially with an entire plan like this. Okay. I don't see walls. Let's turn them back on and see what happens. I'm going to zoom out so that way I can bring both my plans over here. Okay. I'm turning my walls back on, and you'll notice they'll only turn on in the previous plan. They are not there in the copy plan. So turning layers on and off, the copy does not happen. Now, this can be used to your advantage. Okay, and this is why I'm showing you this. So now I'm going to do it with freezing. Okay, so I'm going to copy this entire plan down so we can see the difference side by side. Okay, so I've just copied this plan down so I have the entire thing now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to freeze the layers and I'm going to copy it. And we're going to see the difference of when you copy something versus on and off and frozen. All right. So I'm now going to freeze the layers walls. There they are. So it looks like the same thing happens, right? All right. Now I'm going to close my layer properties and I'm going to draw a selection box around it again. Okay, nothing. Copy. I'm straight, copy. All right, excellent. Now I'm going to turn my layers unfrozen. Same thing, same thing. But what happens when I use the Control-C, Control-V command? We use the copy command. Use a green box this time, see if there's a difference. I'm going to use the Control-C command. So I'm just done Control-C with my keyboard and Control-V. So it looks like the copy command, but it's not, right? It's Control-C, Control-V with my keyboard instead of actually typing out copy command. I'm going to unfreeze my layers now. Same thing. Interesting. When I've done that before and I froze my layers, it actually copied my walls. Maybe it's locking. You know what? No, locking's totally different. Anyway, sorry. No, locking's completely different. I thought I used to find, I thought in the past I had a difference between on and off and freeze and unfrozen, but it looks like there is not actually a difference between the two, other than viewports, which again, I will explain in the next video, okay? So in terms of basic user function, user layer function, there's not really a difference between on and off and freeze and unfreeze, which is why I made this argument. Okay, so I just wanted to explain that. So now let me erase some of these extra plans I have. I don't need this bottom one, but I'll leave the other two just to make a point. Okay, just like literally, that doesn't look like there's a difference, right? Okay. Except for printing, and again, with the freezing. We'll talk about that in the next video. I just want to make that very clear. All right, locking. Let's see what happens with locking. Continue. Let's continue. So I will click the lock, and you'll notice your layer literally goes like a grayed out version. It's got like a transparency set to it almost. The lock literally closes and changes color, which I absolutely love. Again, these symbols are quite interactive. And when I hover over one of those objects, look at my crosshair. Let me close my layers box so I can make this clearer. A little lock will appear when I go over a normal object. I can hover over it. It's fine, right? I can interact. But I cannot interact with a locked layer, and a little lock appears every time I go to any object that is locked. And it's telling you, hey, it's locked, right? You can't do it, okay? So which means, can I use any commands on it? Let's see. Copy? No. Okay, so same functions in terms of copying or interactive commands when it is turned on. The reason why I show you this is because you can use this to your advantage. Let's say all of a sudden, I want the opposite. I want to copy all of my walls, but I don't want to select them all. I don't want to sit here and have to select them all, right? We can use this to our advantage, right? So I'm going to open up my layer properties again. Oh, I didn't spell that, right? And I'm going to unlock my walls, but I just want to copy my text and my walls down, okay? So therefore, I don't want the deck, I don't want my dimensions, I don't want my door tags, I don't want my doors, don't want my fixtures, don't want my hatching, don't want the porch, and don't want my windows. So I want to copy all those things. I could have done lock, freezer, on, but what I like about lock is you still visually see them. But it depends if you want that. If you don't want to visually see these things you don't want to copy, then you go to freezer on and off, right? So you have options, which is so lovely. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to close this for visual sake. I'm going to use a nice blue box around my objects, copy. And now I have just copied down my walls and my text, which is all that I wanted. Just like that. Instead of having to sit here and select over 100 different objects, right? Let's say I wanted windows and doors in there. I could have copied down my windows and doors as well, but except for my fixtures and not my text, right? So it all depends on what you're doing. Okay. All right, so let me unlock a whole bunch of these layers now. There we go. Okay, so now next column is plotting. Plotting in AutoCAD means printing, right? We've been through this. So plotting is printing. And if you haven't been through this, please go check out my printing helpful videos that are posted as well. All right, so the interactive part here of printing, and again, we're going to edit the walls layer, is literally of whether or not the layer can print or not print. That's it. And it's pretty self-explanatory here as well. You'll get a nice red bubble. That red bubble will sit on top of that printer, and that means it's not going to print. Okay, we're going to get to this because this is quite handy. Color. I'm going to talk about the color here. Yes, you click on it, and yes, you have the beautiful rainbow of colors to choose from, which is one of my favorite things, is the rainbow. But they are honestly not all the best and friendly with AutoCAD, unfortunately. So the reason why this rainbow has been specifically picked out for us is for a reason. AutoCAD is telling you, hey, I want you to pick these colors. Out of the beautiful rainbow, please pick this beautiful rainbow. So, you know, that's basically what it's trying to tell you. And the reason why it's for plotting and printing. When you translate your drawings to a PDF, that translation needs a certain CMYK and RGB. It's more CMYK because of our computers, but it needs to translate that CMYK color properly to PDF to say, hey, I want it to actually be black and white, right? We don't print our drawings in color, right? We print them in black and white. And again, setting that up is a different story. That's two different options. We'll get to that later. But when you're choosing color in your layers, please choose out of these first. Then if you need more than that, experiment with some color. I know one other that does print perfectly, which is color number 40. Color number 40 is not in this index here. And I know color number 40 prints well because I use it all the time. So yeah, that's just my little tidbits about color in AutoCAD, all right? And again, I know that's frustrating because there's just such great colors to use, and I want to use them all, trust me. But again, it's that CMYK translation to PDF, and you'll notice these colors are the exact same colors that are on any sort of ink cartridge to a printer, CMYK. All right. It's in relationship to all visual computer software and just computers in general. All right. Line type. Line type is very interesting. Okay, it can be challenging, it can be very interesting. And in fact, I have already built separate tutorial videos about line types and the line type scale. So if you're looking for that specifically, go ahead and check those out. I think there's actually 2 because it can be so in depth, and I explained it in 2 different classes at 2 different times, and they were both very useful tutorial videos, so I just put them both up there. So please take a look at those if that's what you're looking for. What I'm going to explain here with line types is loading them and also what to use, what not to use. Okay, so line types are not all loaded in our file. There are a lot, and they would actually take up more space on our computer because the file would be larger if we had the line types automatically loaded. And AutoCAD has no idea what industry or trades we're from, right? AutoCAD is used for a vast, vast range of trades. So it has no idea what line types we want, right? I could want totally different line types than what you might want versus the next person that might watch this video, right? So what I want to show you here is how to load and then which ones to kind of start with, okay? So we, again, only see continuous, and you'll see one other type because I've preloaded it into this file already, but I will show you another. So load. We now have this gorgeous list of different line types, okay? Feel free to make this box larger if you'd like, okay? It is very nice to be much, much larger, and I'm pretty sure AutoCAD remembers these settings when you make these kinds of changes. I think this can get larger too. Yeah, cool. Awesome. So these are all your different types of line types in AutoCAD that you have access to. Yes, you can download more from the World Wide Web. It's just like hashing, but I won't get into that. The basics in AutoCAD cover the majorities of the industries, and I haven't really needed to download much but blocks, really. All right, so line types you've got to load, and you'll notice there are 3 different types of some of them. There are 3 different types of the most commonly used line types. And the reason why there are 3 different types is because there are 3 different sizes, okay? AutoCAD, once again, has no idea. We always draw 1-to-1, no matter the industry. Everybody draws 1-to-1. But AutoCAD has no idea if what I'm drawing is 4 millimeters big or 4 kilometers big, right? I could be drawing something as small as an automotive part, 1 part, versus the entire car itself, right? It has no idea. So it doesn't know whether or not I need a line type that is good for that car part or for that entire machinery that builds the car, right? So it has 3 different scales, 3 different sizes of line types. The first one that has just the name, no 2 or times 2 at the end, just the name, is the regular size. So you'll see here a description. They call it a description, okay? But it's an example. It's a preview, okay? And you'll see it there. That's its regular size, okay? Border 2, just the number 2 means that it's half the size. You'll see in brackets 0.5 times, which means half the size of the original size. And sure enough, in the preview you see here, if I divided this up by 2 in terms of proportion, you can literally see it's the same. Okay. It actually adds an extra dot in every gap. Interesting. For that one specifically. Anyway, border times 2 is double the size. It's 2 times the size of the original. Okay. So what I suggest you start out with is the original. See if that works for you, and then you know whether or not you have to go smaller or larger. Okay, so I'm going to do this as an example. I'm going to load in, I already had center. I didn't have dashed. Okay, so you've got to click on the line type you want and click OK. You're not done yet. You got to click on the dashed and click OK. All right, so I've just changed my walls to dashed. Let's see if what we see in model space. All right, sure, they're dashed. Yeah, awesome. And now for fun, let's just double check what this is at to make sure. 0.5, whoopsie. Okay, so now I want everybody to do that because mine is not set to 0. I want you all to type in the command LTS, enter. Set this to 0. 1, sorry, set this to 1. So sorry, set this to 1, has to be a numerical value. Set it to 1. Okay, that's probably what yours is already set out with, but just in case. And again, and this is if you're trying to set up your line types. It needs to be set up at 1 or else you have no idea where to go. Okay, this is LTS1 is that basic line type, just like in that chart. Now we know we are at nil, okay, or technically 1. We are at the horizon, I will say. Okay, so you can see by my line type it's too large. I can't even see dashes here. I can't even see dashes here, right? It's too large. Okay, perfect. I'm glad it is, so I can show you how to fix that. All right, open up your layers. I'm now going to load in the one that's half the size, right? It's currently too large. I need it to be smaller. So we go load, and I want dashed 2. Well, not divide 2, dashed 2, because it's half the size. Okay. I click on it again here, and okay. And I have dashed 2. There we go. All right, now we close, and we go back. Much better, much better. Okay. But let's say that's still too large. It is, you know, I don't see it there. I don't see it there. I don't see it there, right? It's still a bit too large. But I have no other line types that are smaller. We only had the 3 and the other one is larger. So it's not going to help me, right? The other times 2 is definitely not going to help me because it's too large. So that's when you go back to that LTS enter and you lower this number, right? It's still too large, which means 1 is too big. So I'm going to go, you go in increments, you go in small increments, 0.9. Okay, a little better. 0.8. There we go, we're getting better. I'm going to jump again, I'm going to go 0.5 now. There we go, that's getting better, right? I can see it there now. Oh, I can see it in that wall, but not that wall. So let's go a little bit more, 0.3. Much better. Much, much better. Okay, so that's how you play. But there's a big but. The LTS here plays with all your line types. All your line types. So I'm going to make an example now and make a point. I'm going to add a new line here. Actually, no, I'm just going to do it to my drawing. So in my layers, just for argument's sake, I'm going to make my deck a different line type. So that's center for sure. All right, let's look. So I look at the center now, the center lines, and I'm like, okay, well, yeah, those are too big now as well, right? I have 2 different line types in my drawing. I'm just doing this for an argument. I would never do this as a drawing. I would always have my walls as continuous and my deck as continuous, but I'm just doing this as like the largest objects in my drawing for argument's sake for the tutorial. But let's say, again, my center lines, they're just way too big, right? So again, I go into my layer properties and I load another, like that smaller, center. So center 2, half the size. Okay, center 2, okay. And I close and we go back. Okay, that's better, but let's say that wasn't, okay? Let's say I wanted it even smaller, okay? Well, if I go LTS, and I keep lowering this, let's say now I'm happy with my center, but I'm not happy with that dashed. You have no choice, okay? I want to make that very clear. AutoCAD has a limit. There is a limit to the line types and how many you can have and how variations you can have them at. You've got to make sure that you're playing with the same ones. So in your layer properties, if 1 is center 2 and it works, try your best to set the rest at that 2 if they're available. I know they're not all available for all of them, but that's where I suggest to start to get your line types in the same variation. Then you can play with the LTS better. So let's say 0.1 is too small for my dash, but perfect for my center. So I'm going to go 0.2, and there's a happy medium. Okay, you got to be sure to kind of, again, keep it the same variation of line type, and I'm talking scale. I'm talking size. I'm talking type. So that's why I keep saying variation, because I'm talking about multiple things. And then you'll be able to play with this command and get a happy medium between all your line types. Okay? All right. So that's my argument with, not argument, sorry, my description on line types. Okay, I'm going to set my layers back to the proper layers. They should be now. Because they're just, you know, off, not like that. They're not supposed to be like that, so it's throwing my eyes off. Okay, there we go, much better. All right. So now that explains line types. Okay, so now what I want to do in the layers box, line weight. Line weight is set up, you can set up your line weight in one of two ways. And in your AutoCAD class, if your instructor is asking you to set up your line weights in your plot style, that will be shown in a separate video. I'm not going to cover that here in this video. Okay, that is totally a separate skill. And it's also just a little bit more expertise. I want to cover the basics in this video. So the basics of line weights are based on your layers. So which means they are set to that line weight and they will print to that line weight. So again, whatever you put on these layers are going to print to this line weight. It's as simple as that. Okay, when you set up your line weights in your layers, it's as simple as that. But this causes you sometimes to have more layers because you will create sometimes, let's say, 2 different types of text layers, and you want a more of a heavier weighted text versus, actually that's a bad example because you can just bold your text. I'll say walls. Let's say you have 2 different types of walls layers. You have exterior walls and interior walls, and that's because you want your exterior walls to print at a heavier line weight versus your interior walls. Some people would make that argument and say, well, I just want all my walls on the same layer. So then you would have to make them different color, and you would set that up in your different plot style table. Okay, so that's, again, a different story. Line weights and layers, it's as simple as that. Whatever is on that layer will print at that line weight. Okay. Default is around like a 1.9. It's like a 0.19 no, you know what? I think it's like a 0.21. I think it's in between 0.2 and 0.25 in terms of where default is. I always get that question. Where is default? I think it's, in terms of heaviness, I think it's in between 0.2 and 0.25. Okay. The next thing I will say about line weights is you usually want to print like any structural stuff the heaviest. So like your beam lines or anything like that, or your grade lines. Those are usually the heaviest. Next is like your exterior walls and what's cut. Sorry, the heaviest is also what's cut. Or anything that's cut will be the heaviest. Next is like your walls. Then it's your, next is in your text and dimensions. And I'll usually keep those at the same. So you'll see that in my drawing, right? Like, so I have my walls the heaviest right now because I don't have any structural stuff in here right now or anything that's cut. And I've kept my windows the same because I want them to print at the same line weight. And now that I think about that, I would actually like to change that. So I'm going to make that a 0.3, a little bit lighter. Then I have my text and my dimensions. Okay, my text is at default, and I have my dimensions just printing a tiny bit lighter than my actually, no, sorry, they're the same. Sorry, yes, they're the same. Sorry, yes, no, it's printing a little lighter. Sorry. My text is next, and my dimensions is printing a little lighter, which is the same as my deck, as well as the porch, which is intentional. Okay. Next, I have my fixtures. Sometimes I will put this at a 0.18, and I'll make those a little bit lighter than my text and dimensions. And then the lightest of the lightest of the lightest is your hatching. Okay, your lightest layer is always your hatching. All right, and the last thing I'll cover here is just transparency. I set up transparency sometimes with different types of hatching, and I'll do it based on the object. Sometimes people do it based on layer, which is fine, and it just literally means that there's a little bit of a transparency to it, so you can kind of see through it, so it's a little bit grayed out. And you can use this to your advantage, like different types of hatching, different types of text, different depth of field in your elevations. It's quite handy. And then again, the VP freeze, I will cover this in a separate tutorial. Okay, that's pretty much sums it up. I'm gonna close off the box. That's pretty much layers 101. Other than that, the main thing I have to say is just like make sure you're clean in model space. Like make sure what you're drawing is on the right layer. That's the basic thing to keep in mind. And if you don't and you want to draw it all in one layer, then you've got to put the time aside to clean it up afterwards. You've got to select the objects. Like for instance, I've made a covered porch. I've made a porch layer, right? I've got to select my objects. It probably would have been easier to do it that way. There we go. I have to select my objects and I've got to put them on the layer, right? I've got to make sure, where is it? Porch. there it is, that they go on the right layer, right? So you gotta, you know, it's either you do it while you're drawing. So let's say I want to add some hatching. I'm going to change my layer now and then go into the hatching command, right? You either do it that way or you add your hatch and then put it on the right layer, right? So just be sure that you do one of those two things or else your drawings can get very messy and very hard to clean up, okay? So, but other than that, I think that sums it up. Oh, last thing. Oh, yeah, last thing is do not print layer. So by default, AutoCAD will create a def points layer. And you're like, what is def points? Like, what does this mean? It's just the layer that is set up not to print. And you're going to ask me like, okay, why do I ever want a layer set up not to print? And I'm going to answer always. Okay, so if you have a def points layer there, awesome. If not, then you're going to want to create a do not print layer. So I'm going to do so. I'm going to create a new layer and it's literally going to call do not print. Okay, and all I do with this one is I set the color to black because I put this on paper. She says, there we go. I set the color to black and then I also just click the printer. So that way there is a red bubble on it. I do not want this layer to print. Okay, and that is all I do. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to prove my point. So I go to my paper and I have my viewports. I do not want these to print. My viewports are extremely handy. I need them visually, but I do not want them to print on paper. So I'm going to highlight them and I'm going to put them on that do not print layer. Okay, and that is exactly why you want them. So if you, again, have a def points layer, you would put these viewports on your def points layer. Okay, awesome. Hope you found something in this tutorial handy. It was longer than I thought it would be, but I hope it was useful. I hope you all are enjoying your summer, and I hope you're all doing well. Thank you so much for watching and listening. And again, my next video will be all about freezing and thawing layers, where I will show you how to show things in different viewports, but it's all on the same drawing. Okay, and that'll be in the next layer tutorial video. All right, awesome. Hope you're all doing well. Take care. Ciao.